Let's start over. All right, let's get started. We're gonna kind of go around the room here, talk about you're turning a group of strangers into a team summary. Good little video. I mean, it was a great illustration. So I enjoyed that. TED Talks are just obviously you cannot just have a college class where you just watch TED Talks all the time and eat popcorn, but they do illustrate sometimes from but they do illustrate, like nuances. The TED Talk selection, they have videos about how you can become a TED Talk speaker and how to do speaking like TED Talks and things like that. But what I think is so interesting about it is they take like a topic that could be like a mainline topic, and then they have like a nuance or a different angle on it. So, they will, one of my favorite ones, just for like entertainment sake, is about this guy who used to write for a science magazine. He's a journalist, and he's a sciencey guy, but mostly a writer. And he got assigned the worst job to cover the Memory Olympics. He said it was the biggest snooze fest. You go, it's a bunch of people sitting there looking at decks of cards or phone books, and then you have to like recite what you memorized. He said it was so boring, so quiet. But then what he did is he started interviewing all these different people at the Memory Olympics and he's assuming they're all geniuses, right? They're all like some kind of savant level, that they have something different about their brains. Almost everyone on average person. Most of them weren't highly educated. They weren't like secret geniuses. They were just average people who would learn tricks of how to memorize stuff. So he's like, so then he went and he interviewed like the previous winners and people like that. And most of them, not geniuses, average people, learn these tricks. So in his research, as he's writing this up, he's like, maybe I should try some of these tricks just to see if they work. So he started doing it, and it was like a switch flipped in his brain, and he was able to memorize all this stuff. So I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's really good. Anyway, that's the example of, so it's a TED Talk about something that really is just kind of like, okay, memory. Okay, it's kind of a topic that is interesting to people, but he comes out from this whole different angle. And there's so many ones like that. And then, basically they're great conversation starters and nothing else. So, okay, all right, we'll start with Max over here. Why don't you kick off the turning a group of strangers into a team talk? And I might brew another cup of coffee while you're talking. You just have to talk over.
So I thought that video was interesting, just kind of how it compared teams and teaming. So one of the things was that teaming is much more fluid, in that like the people in teaming, they kind of interchange a lot more frequently. She gave the example of like people working on a movie where the teams are just kind of going in and out, interchanging. And then one of the things that I noted from that was how teams have a specific purpose, and they work together and function well in a specific circumstance. But in other circumstances, teaming may actually be more beneficial, and that's in a highly fluctuating environment. And in that circumstance, that's when teaming can actually outperform a standard team, because a regular team focuses on that unity and the camaraderie between people, whereas teaming recognizes that there's a lot of fluctuation there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That kind of goes along with what we talked about in the Leadership Toolbox with project management, how the, I don't know, some of you remember that chapter on different stages of team. It's like forming, storming, norming, forming. Basically, you have a bunch of independent actors all going in their own direction. Then there has to be some kind of little bit of a conflict, so to speak, so that they can figure out how to go in the same direction. And that's the teaming process kind of skips over having to worry about the relational part, just get right to the, actions. That's good. Joe.
I liked your point about not viewing other people as competitors, and I think it's pretty easy in the workplace to like if somebody new comes in and you kind of view them as a competitor and people fight for jobs, but you kind of shoot yourself in the foot if you're not willing to work with people. And she was saying how, like in the modern world, we have to work with people all the time, and teams are more effective than individuals. So I think it's good to learn to not view other people as competitors. Even if you are competing in a sense for a certain job, you still have to be willing to work with them and be humble about it.
That might have come up in one of your independent ones with Simon Sinek. He might have said the same thing. Excellent. All right, Christy.
I thought it was really interesting how she was talking about how together is not just like working in a group, like individually and each working on your own separate thing. And just being like, hey, here you go, that it means all pulling together like to solve the same problems and to win the same race. And that it means like that you can't do it alone, you have to like ask for help and be willing to like be humble and communicate with others and be willing to help each other, because that's really what a team is, and that's really like how you end up having success. That if you're all just doing your own thing and being like, well, we're part of a team, that isn't exactly what brings success to a team.
Without that humility and communication, you end up with, what was it, the 1996 on their USA basketball dream team. They had like every superstar in the NBA, and they didn't win the gold medal. They were also arrogant. They're all used to being a star. They didn't communicate. They didn't just a bunch of independent superstars. They got beat by Ukraine or Italy or something like that. So I know Ukraine, right? Anyway, Alyssa.
One of the things that she said that I thought was interesting was that some leaders have been crystal clear that they don't have all the answers, which I thought that was an interesting statement. Just thinking about the fact that thinking about like if my manager would be vulnerable to the fact like she doesn't know everything and she doesn't like have all the answers to all the problems to solve everything all the time, like just being vulnerable and being honest about the fact that you don't necessarily know is not a bad thing, and it's actually probably a good thing, because then it helps build respect between you and your peers and you and like the people that are maybe underneath you, because then they can see that you're just a person too, and then maybe it helps them. Like I know for me, it would help me to know it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to fail, because then like you just get back up and try again. But,
Yeah, I mean, as a leader, it's hard to make yourself vulnerable, honestly. It's hard to, share things, like, because you're afraid you're going to be kind of taken down a couple notches in the people's eyes that are following you. And we kind of set up this idea that, leaders are practically perfect in every way, like Mary Poppins or something. And it's not true. We kind of carry this false sense of perfection, and we want to look good all the time, which is our pride. So it's hard. It's hard to be transparent and vulnerable. Pastors go through this a lot because, pastors up there preaching about sin every Sunday. And then if they're struggling with something, who do they tell about it? Because they're the one that's supposed to be like the standard, and their kids are supposed to be the standard, and their wife's supposed to be the standard, and their house is supposed to be the standard. When I became a senior pastor, I went from being the number 2 guy in ministry for a long time, the number 1 guy at a much smaller ministry. And I honestly thought I had to be King Arthur, or in more modern terms, Lionel on Thundercats, either one, where you basically have to you have to be the best at everything. So, in King Arthur, he had to out-joust, Sir Galahad, and he had to out-sword fight this guy. In Thundercats, Lionel had to outrun the cheetah, and he had to outfight the panther, and all these. You have to be number 1 to be able to stand up in front of everyone, which is a total myth. I mean, think about, I'm going through this right now, so I'll be transparent. I'll practice this. So I was asked if I'd be willing to teach a Sunday school class at Community Baptist. And I was also asked if I'd be willing to do a men's Bible study. I've been thinking about it. I'm like, well, what if I have Dr. Cole show up to my men's Bible study? He has more Bible knowledge in his pinky finger than I have in my whole body. So how could I lead a Bible study with people that know the Bible so much better? how could I teach a Sunday school class if a bunch of, seminarians show up? So, but I have to kind of practice what I preach all these years when other people have used the exact same discussion with me. Like, hey, I'm not a Christian school teacher. How could you ask me to be a children's ministry Sunday school teacher? Shouldn't you ask all the Christian school teachers from your ministry to do it? But, God wants to use people that are willing, not necessarily the top of everything, or else then you just have one person, only the geniuses would be doing everything, which sometimes I might call a genius to do something, sometimes you won't. So, all right, Katie. Go, Amy, did I skip over you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was making my coffee and I just literally, you should let me do it, but anyway, all right, Amy, go ahead.
But I wasn't able to do a write-up because I watched it and then I got tired and fell asleep.
That's
So
all
it's
right.
my bad. But one thing that I liked was just being curious about what other people have to say, because I think a lot, like obviously everyone has a different perspective on like a scenario or situation. So just being able to listen to other people's things and humble yourself and be like, okay, I might not have the best solution or the best input on this. And then being able to not just hear what other people have to say, but listen and see how that can apply to the situation, to your team and everything.
It definitely changes other people's perception of you if they sense that you're willing to listen to them. So it knocks down a lot of barriers instantly. All right, Katie, is it your turn?
It is my
Okay, all
turn.
right, good.
I should have let her skip because that's what I was gonna say too.
That's what you get for calling her out.
I
It's like,
know, yeah, whatever.
I don't believe in karma, but that's what some people.
I just like what she said though about like having situational humility and then curiosity. I like how she said situational because in some cases you do need to like put yourself out there and like insert your voice and not just back up and say it wasn't my problem. Like you do need to be humble enough to accept your mistakes. I feel like in a team, you can't just push it off to the team. You need to be able to accept that responsibility. And then being curious about what other people are doing, like keeping the ball rolling kind of a thing. Just not stopping where the project ends, like trying to branch out and see how you can make it better.
That's good. That ties into our design thinking too, never really ending, with a final product, but kind of always being willing to tweak it. All right, Daniel.
Yeah, what I really liked was obviously like you were saying, the evolution of the idea, and then also the mentality that teaming was teaching, like somehow how it like required humility, camaraderie, and curiosity. It required like a humble view of your own inadequacies, and then like an elevated view of others' abilities. And so kind of I like how she talked about how other people's success is not like your failure, you know what I mean? Sometimes we feel like that, it's like, oh man, you wrote a paper and got a 99 on it, and I wrote a paper, got a 95, I'm a failure or something, you know what I mean? Like we're just so comparing all the time. And so we tend not to be happy when other people are successful.
Yeah, we, at Harvest, we had right around 1,000 students in our school, and the demographic breakdown was probably 25 to 35% of school were Korean students, like both parents are from Korea, and then, different Asian groups. And much of the Asian stereotypical mentality for school is the competitive nature. So in my son's class, he had one friend, mom was Filipina, another friend, mom was Chamorro. They both kind of had that competitive Asian mentality for school, so much so that in second grade, Andrew had a brand new school teacher. She actually came mid-semester. First semester teacher had to leave for some reason. Second semester, new teacher, first class. She gets the two most competitive helicopter tiger moms in the class. So the teacher thought the moms were just trying to help. They'd be there every day at the beginning of school. They'd come an hour before school's out. Sometimes they'd sit in the back of the classroom while she was teaching. And then they asked if they could help her with the grades, with the grade books. And what they were doing is they were looking and comparing their child's grades to other people's grades. And the thing that really killed it for this teacher was one of the moms actually found a transcription error in the grade book. So they did a manual grade book. It was like, 15 years ago, whatever, and found that there was accidentally a swapped grade where her student said she had a D and another student had an A+. She knew her student had an A+. So of course, Now they didn't trust this teacher at all. But it was all, they were competing against, these moms were competing against each other, and they pit their kids against each other. So when they sit in the classroom, everything now is a competition. It's not about learning, it's not about enjoying school, it's not about growing, it's about being number one, and being number one every year. And it's toxic. And the crazy thing is, one of those kids, he got over a 4.0, got offered multiple scholarships. I believe he went to college for 2 years, and now he's remodeling houses. So what's the point? You know, he would have enjoyed his life so much better if the mom would not have done that. So anyway, all right, Caleb.
So my takeaway from the video was kind of thought of how many times have I actually been in a teaming experience myself. And even here at school, we have all these students come from all over the place, and then we throw them on different sports teams. I mean, our soccer team, our basketball team, those are all melting pots for individuals that come from all over the place to work together as a team to accomplish a goal, and that would be to win a game or to win a match. And so I thought that was super interesting, and kind of my personal experience with it was like for nationals one year, I had the best breaststroke time. So they take 4 individuals, put them on one team together, and then they ship us up to Minnesota for, you literally wait like 6 or 7 hours to swim for 30 seconds. And so, you know, working together with those guys, there's so much pressure because, like, you know, what if I false start? What if I do my turn wrong? What if I don't touch with 2 hands, kind of thing? But I like how she closed it out. She used a quote from Abraham Lincoln. She says, "I don't like that person, so I must get to know them better." She said, "Look to your right and look to your left, and view every single one of those people sitting in those chairs next to you, and view them with their different talents and their different understandings and their different life experience. And once you are able to understand that fact, you're able to string together a powerful team of super successful and efficient leaders."
That's good. Good. We're trying to do that a little bit with the way we do projects in these classes. So obviously, you guys are all forced to be together because you selected this class, but you didn't like apply and, you know, apply for certain positions on the team. You're just in here, and then we have to make it work, right? So if we're going to do a project, we all have to work together. And so there's a little bit of the teaming aspect, and there's a little bit of the team aspect. Kind of because we're together for so long, it becomes more of a team. But initially, like when I split you up into 2 groups and say, hey, you guys go out there and talk about this and decide this and bring something back, it's really kind of this teaming aspect. So it's good. It's good. Okay, excellent. Well, we have another cycle here, which are the self-guided viewing. Some of you picked Simon Sinek because you picked up on the fact that he's like my crowd favorite speaker. So, but man, you guys found some great stuff that I know I'm going to use some of them. So I'm going to try and put them all in my different playlists for the classes. So you might see one of your videos again at some point. Okay, well, let's just start right back here with Caleb and work our way around. If you didn't get it done, just say pass, no shame. It's okay. You can do like what Amy said. Say, I watched it, but I slept. Or you can say, I didn't watch it, but I can make something up real quick. Or I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. And you come back, load it up with a video. Like, oh, I watched it for 6 minutes. Okay, Caleb, go ahead.
So I kind of last night at 12:27, as I was looking through TED Talk videos, I wanted to find something kind of a little bit out of the norm, and I found a TED Talk, and the title was "I Was Almost a School Shooter." And so this video was shared by a man who came from a broken family. Parents used drugs, very abusive. They were always on the move and constantly moving around, going school to school to school. And so he's always the new kid, always struggling with different emotions. And because of the moving, he was really poor. Just really came from a broken family. And kind of toward when he was 14, 15 years old, he ended up being homeless. So he was attending school and then going and he's living in his buddy's shed. And that's basically his life. And just surrounded basically by extreme darkness. And he started cutting around that time. It's very interesting. He raised his arm up and you can actually see in the light. I mean, you think of cutting with razor blades, you know, how big could, I mean, they're like gashes in his arm, and you could see it when he raised up his arm for the camera. But once he cut himself one time really bad, and he realized he was getting into a dark place. And I found it super interesting that up to this point, like no teachers or other people tried to get involved in his life. And so he went to social services kind of when he hit like the all-time low, and they called his mom to come in with him. And because of the parents' trouble with the legal system, his mom basically was able to spin and manipulate the social workers, and just to play it off that, hey, you know, he's making it up to get attention. He's really fine. So at that point, he knew all hope was lost. And after that, his mom outside said to him, do a better job next time and I'll buy you the razors. And so with being involved with the drugs and the gang banging and all that stuff, tried to end up getting himself a weapon, and he was planning on going to the school or a mall at this point. He didn't really care. He didn't really have a specific goal, but he just wanted to do the max amount of damage with the least amount of security. But kind of as this process was happening, the gentleman that he was living with, he had stole from him, he had lied to him, yet he continued to show him kindness throughout all of this. And but that friend that was letting him stay in his shit cared about him, and he noticed him, and he started to treat him like a human being. And for a person that had literally been bullied and was told he was trash, all these different places all around the United States, he invited him and just invited him to a movie and took value in him. And not like a fake value, like, you know, let's go get you help, just being interested in him and treating him like a human. And so kind of tying that in, as Christians, we should be willing to love and share good news with everyone. We should have a different heart for the people we work with or have interaction with. It breaks my heart to think that there are people in the workplace that get to this point. They start jumping off roofs, hanging themselves, shooting, you name it. As Christians, we should be watching and caring for the people around us in the workplace as well as everyday life. So
Good. I think it reminds us, you know, to have empathy. You're trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, which is constantly makes you vulnerable. It takes emotional energy, but it's a big part of being a Christian, period, and then being a Christian leader, Christian coworker. Yeah.
So mine was a Simon Sinek one, and he was talking about how great leaders inspire. And he compares a lot of different leaders or like businesses that are similar, like Apple to, I don't even remember the name of the other place he compared it to because you don't even know about them. And just the difference between their business models. And he's talking about how a lot of
I
businesses.
think it was talking about Dell. I think it was Dell.
One of them was Dell. There was another one that he compared to at the beginning, but I know Dell, like he was saying, we don't buy, you know, MP3 players from Dell because we think of them as a computer company, but you know, from Apple, we buy pretty much anything they bring out. He was just saying it's a lot of it has to do with the marketing. They don't say, hey, we've got great computers, you should buy it. They start from the inside of like why they are there, and they're there for like, hey, you want something that's user friendly, you want this, and so they kind of go through their why instead of their what. And the same with MLK is he got others to believe, they wanted to believe that he inspired other people, not because he believed in the what, but the why of what he was doing. So I think, let me see here. Oh yeah, so the key element was just the inside out way of thinking, and then appealing to people's more emotional side to inspire them and give them a deeper motivation. And so it wasn't just like factually based of what and which are the results of the why.
If you come into my office, you'll see on the wall, of course, it looks like I've been like solving like a serial killer or something, because I got like all these papers everywhere and like sticky notes. But the very first paper next to the light switch is the why. And I actually have Simon Sinek circles, you know, starting with the why. And then I had to come up with the why this program, like why is this even essential? And then from that, I've had to go back and think, okay, so some of the things I originally thought would fit don't fit the why. So I put those things off and added things in I think fit the why. So yeah, that's in my top top 3 TED Talks.
He did it with like the TiVo or whatever, because he said like for TiVo, it's like a really, I mean, they were super innovative and it's like you can pause live TV, fast forward it, you can do anything you want with it, like you're in complete control, but all they did was say like, hey, we've got this product that'd be great for you, you should get it.
Yeah.
Instead of saying like, do you want control? You have control in all areas of your life. Do you want control in the, realm of
Yeah.
TV? So they didn't go from the why, so.
Was it this class that, no, it was a different class. We watched a video yesterday, in History and Theology of Leadership by Ken Blanchard. He was talking about servant leadership. And he also talked about having that why mentality, not just the what. Very good. Katie.
My video was called "Why We Need to Treat Our Employees as Thoughtfully as Our Customers." Just say he was like a consultant for business strategy in Boston. Anyway, she was comparing like how companies in America collectively spend $1 trillion a year in customer research, but they only spend $750,000 a year on employee engagement. So she was saying, why do we spend this much money on our customers? Why don't we spend more money like figuring out what our employees need? Because like with customers, they target their pain points. Like Apple tried to take away the hassle and just make their store more enjoyable for their customers. So she kind of compared that to businesses. Like Google was losing a lot of employees, new mothers specifically. Like when they go on maternity leave, they only got 12 weeks. And then they found that a lot of mothers were just quitting after those 12 weeks because they felt they needed more time with their kids. So Google saw that pain point and they adjusted to give them 18 weeks instead of the 12. And with that adjustment, they saw like 50% more retention rate. So they combined their need with what the employees need to get like a better result. So she just thinks that basically the outcome of the video is like you need to spend more time figuring out what your employees need in order to better engage them and get a better result in your company.
So, for any business, any ministry, there are 100 others or more that pay the exact same amount, have the same basic benefits package, have the same, stress load, same type of facility. So what is it that keeps an employee at a company for 10 years or 15 years? I have a friend who owns a Chinese restaurant in Guam. It's a big restaurant. Yes, some people have worked for him for 15 to 20 years. I guarantee they could make 50 cents more an hour just going down the street to the new restaurant or whatever. But he, in a much smaller way, tries to help them with their pain points. He helps them if their air conditioning at home is broken, he'll go over and fix it for them. If they need a ride to work, if they're struggling with addiction, he helps them get treatment. And he's retained really employees that could have easily moved on and worked somewhere else or jumped from job to job for a long time because he focuses on those pain points. That's good. Amy.
My TED Talk was about the 5 pillars of effective leadership. And it's the person that was doing it is just like a sales rep. So it wasn't even like some big leader in like a company. So it's like, it really shows how like you can get like a viewpoint from someone that's a sales rep about leadership, not just someone that's like actually in a high role of leadership. So the first pillar that he discussed was accountability. So understanding that as a leader, you have to take responsibility for all the good things that happen and all the bad things that happen, and being eager to hear, just being eager to hear praise just as much, criticism just as much as you're eager to hear praise. The second pillar is curiosity. So always wanting to rethink problems, ask the right questions to the right people at the right time, and then they kind of redefine the world and constantly seek to change the norm. The next pillar was transparency, which is about keeping people in the loop. So they strive to understand people and help them understand different situations as well. Their intentions to keep contact with stakeholders and listen to their customers really help push the team forward. The fourth pillar is love, so specifically loving what they do. They identify with the purpose, their people, and with the team themselves. They know what they're doing matters. It's not just like, oh, I have to come in, clock in, do a job. Like what they're doing matters. And then the last pillar was empathy. So they avoid barriers and dissonance and anger and empathy. And they strive to understand people and understand a problem and solve it. So when they understand problems, they're able to fix them and find real solutions to the problems.
Good. That's a good basic. I'm probably gonna use that for another, like a more entry level leadership class, because I think that'd be a good way to kind of get about 5 different conversations going. So it's great. Perfect.
I don't remember what mine was called because it was a long title, but mine was a high school band teacher talked about how she gets really good results from her high school students and gets them to actually care about what they're doing as opposed to just like, my parents made me be in band or something like that. But she talked about how in their school, there's like in the back, one of the back rooms, there's like this wall that's just like all these old bricks and stuff. And a couple of the students just one year decided that they were going to claim a brick for themselves and like put their name on it. And like some of her band students came in like the years after that and noticed that and they thought that was really cool. So she like flipped that and was like, oh, well, I'm going to use that as incentive. So her thing was if you are in band for 4 years or like something like that, then you can have your own brick and you can do whatever you want to it. And she was like, well, like it helped because of the students were like, well, this is really cool. I get to have my name on this thing for like however long school's here. So she talked about how that kind of helped her form a new way of like motivating people and getting better results. So she basically had 3 ways to do that. One was nurturing the individual, having a vision and a goal, and then motivating. So for nurturing the individual, I thought that one was like the most important one because she was just talking about how you just like take an interest in like your students or your employees, whatever it might be, take an actual genuine interest. And like people can tell if you're being genuine or fake, like if you actually care about them or not. And an example that she used was she was like running to a meeting one day during school and she passed one of her students in the hall and asked her how she was doing. And her student was like, oh, I'm like, okay. And she could kind of tell that she wasn't. So she could have like kept going to her meeting and like, okay. And then, but instead she like stopped and was like, why don't you come talk to me in my office? And she found out like this student, her parents were fighting and like being abusive and like all this kind of stuff. And she was able to help her through that. So just showing people that you care will really actually motivate them to, in the long run, to have better results. And then having a vision and a goal, obviously, just hers might have been, and this kind of went with motivation, I think, but hers might have been like, since she's a band teacher, we're gonna have this piece sound like this over here and envision your favorite instrument, like, or your favorite player, what they sound like, and I want you to try to sound like them now. And then for motivation, one of the examples that she used was if you guys get like this one measure right, then I'll buy you a pony. And it was like her last resort kind of thing. She just pulled out of nowhere and they did. And she's like, it was interesting to see how like that just snapped them. And it was like, maybe they didn't really want a pony, but like they wanted to do like their best for her because they cared about her. And she did buy them a pony in the end. And then like every year after that, all the students wanted a pony too. So like she would find something to motivate them with and like buy them a pony.
Wow.
It was like a little like $9
Yeah.
pony or whatever. But so the stuff like that, I just thought that was really interesting. And I thought that was interesting to think about like how you could implement that maybe into like the workforce instead of just a school setting, just adding different, well, first of all, like actually showing that you care about your employees, but then also just adding different incentives so that your employees are excited about what they're doing and they actually have an incentive and a desire to want to do it better as opposed to just, oh, I have to do it, so I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, that's
half-heartedly.
good. It's interesting that you picked that video because I'm part of the Ankeny Leadership Institute this year, so I'm in their leadership class. So it's like continuing education, different business leaders. I joined it as well. But the consultant they used for the last 2 meetings was a local high school band teacher from Winterset, and he was a band teacher for like 20 years. He's kind of famous in the area. He retired from that in his 50s, and now he's a business consultant, and he uses a lot of his background from that to help businesses. Just a lot of big skills. So, Christy.
Mine was kind of like Emmy is I watched something and fell asleep. But I watched a video about a guy, his name is Drew Dudley, and he just talked about the concept of everyday leadership and just how it's really easy to look at like CEOs or like heads of a big company and be like, oh, that is leadership. And it's just like redefining what we actually believe leadership is and what we actually believe leadership does. And he talks about how his definition of leadership is just coming alongside and leading and helping to improve people's everyday lives by your everyday life. And that was just like a really cool concept to me, something that I hadn't really thought of. But that is basically like what leadership is, and just how he talks about seeking out times every day to like invest in someone, or just like come alongside and try and improve their life, like pick 3 people and try and improve their life by like doing one thing, and just how that in and of itself is leadership in someone else's life, even though it's kind of a non-traditional way of thinking about it. I just thought that was super cool.
That's good. That'd be a good every morning prayer request, right? Like, Lord, help me intersect 3 people's lives today where I can make just a little bit of a change. And think how many people's lives you would change if you had that in front of your thinking every day. You know? So, all right, Joe.
Mine was called What It Takes to Be a Great Leader, and the speaker basically just gave 3 points on what she thought it would take to be a great leader. The first one was, what are you looking, she asked the question, where are you looking to anticipate the next change in your business or in your life? And she was like saying like who you spend time with, what you read, what you do with your time, what you think about, and all these things is all anticipating what changes you can make in your business later. Like if you're hanging out with the right people or reading books that are going to help your business later. So she was saying how important it is to focus on that. And then number 2 was, what is the diversity of your network? So she was saying how you need to hang out with people that are different than you and surround yourself with people that have different ideas and come from different backgrounds and have different expertises, not just like what you have. And the third one was, are you courageous enough to abandon a practice that has been successful in the past? So not getting locked in on that one idea or that one business model or product or whatever it is, and sticking with it even if like maybe it was successful, but now it's not very successful. So just being willing to let it go and find something else, even though maybe it did make you a lot of money in the first place or it was really successful. But just being humble enough to say it's not working anymore. So yeah, that was her 3 points.
Yeah, that third point goes along with what we've been reading and talking about from How the Mighty Fall. You know, gotta kind of be able to read the weather, so to speak, of your business and know, you know, what needs to change and what you can stick with. All right, Max.
My video was by Simon Sinek. It was called Why Good Leaders Make You Feel Safe.
That's the one that I was on, and then I just like kept clicking through some of them. I was like, I'm going this one.
I actually think I showed that video in one of the other classes this semester because I liked it so much.
And his argument was that good leaders are ones that make the people within their organization feel safe. And they do that by unifying the people under them. So they're not channeling their energy against each other, but they're unified and then focusing their energy against the challenges that are outside of their group. He also pointed out that leaders and authorities are not the same thing. Those with authority are obeyed because of their position, but leaders are followed because of their care for others. And I know in Leadership Toolbox, we talked a lot about servant leadership, and it's just interesting that that people in the world are recognizing that that's an effective strategy. Because when you care about people, they're more motivated to follow you. And then one of the things that he talked about was he drew the correlation, or he used an example as a good leader is like a parent, in that the parent wants the best thing for their child. So they want to provide them with opportunity, encouragement, education, so that they can be better off than themselves. And so as a leader, they want to see the people under them succeed even beyond where they are right now. And so a leader must care for and put others before themselves. And one of the quotes that he that I took from that was good leaders would never sacrifice the people to save the numbers. They would sooner sacrifice the numbers to save the people. And kind of referencing in a bigger corporation where those who actually care about the people don't care about the numbers as much, like their profits and money. They would rather save the people and keep them in their organization rather than only care about the money. One of the companies that he talked about in that video, I forget the name, but it was describing how they had a policy where they would never be fired because of their performance. And so like a parent, if they were like a parent would come to their child if they were struggling, they wouldn't say, all right, you messed up, you're out. But instead they would come to like a parent, they would come to them and say, hey, what's going on? Let's work together. Let's fix this. And so they wouldn't ever fire somebody based on their performance. So I thought that was something that was very interesting. And they kind of really took that parent model and just went with it. And so again, the topic of servant leadership, although he didn't call it that in the video, he definitely alluded to it and how effective leaders function. And so just taking that and applying that to all areas of life.
Yeah.
Not just in the business world.
That's good. That goes right along with yesterday in our history and theology of leadership class, we watched a short video by Ken Blanchard, and he said that he and the CEO of WD-40 company came up with the phrase, don't mark my paper or grade my paper, help me get an A. Instead of just, basically, do you have the best interest of your workers in mind? Like, so as a teacher, is my goal to just grade you? Just put it out there, whatever you get, and then I grade you and I've done my job? Or is my goal to help you get an A? And it's really a good gut check for teachers, and it's a good gut check for leaders as well. All right, time's up, but I do want to I'm gonna give you an assignment. I'm gonna make it due Sunday night so that Monday, so you're not tempted to do it at 6:49 on Monday morning. And all it is gonna be is we're gonna start by just trying to come up with what intelligent questions can we ask that make sure that we really define the challenge. The challenge, which I'll put all this on there, how might we increase student and local community value through work relationships? So there are questions that you need to come up with. And what I'm going to do is, we did the whole sticky note process way back when we started with design thinking. We're going to do kind of a digital sticky note. So we're going to use the smart board, and you'll come up and you're going to put your questions on the board. So as you come in Monday morning, you'll be able to come right out and put your questions on the board. And then we're going to talk about those questions. We're going to really try and define the challenge. Okay? That's the whole class Monday is defining the challenge. All righty. So, and it'll be due Sunday night late. I'll make it. What's the latest you might find yourself doing homework Sunday night? 9 p.m. If I made it due 1 a.m. Monday morning,